There is a book published in 1908 attributed to 3 initiates, which codified knowledge going back to ancient Egypt, to Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary master of occult wisdom. This book is called the Kybalion, and it does not talk about self-help. It does not talk about superficial positive thinking. It talks about something much more radical, that reality is mental, that the universe is a projection of the universal mind, and that when you understand the laws that govern this projection, you are not just observing reality, you are literally reprogramming it. The first sentence you just heard, "The all is mind," is not a metaphor. It is a brutal ontological statement. Everything you call matter, energy, time, space are manifestations of a single mental substance. And if this is true, then every thought you have is not just a reaction to reality, it is a reconfiguration of reality. Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, is a figure shrouded in mystery. Some say he was a real Egyptian sage who lived thousands of years before Christ. Others say he is a mythical fusion of the Greek god Hermes with the Egyptian Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the inventor of writing, the guardian of secret knowledge. But what matters is not whether Hermes existed as a historical person. What matters is the philosophical system that carries his name, Hermeticism, and the 7 principles that supposedly govern all creation. These principles were guarded in secret for millennia, transmitted only orally among initiates. Why? Not out of selfishness, but out of danger. Because when you understand these laws, you gain access to a level of reality that most people do not even know exists. And with that access comes responsibility and the potential for destructive use. The Corpus Hermeticum, the collection of texts attributed to Hermes, states something disturbing. Hermes Trismegistus, Corpus Hermeticum 1.6. Mind is of the very essence of God, and in men such a mind is God, and therefore some men are gods. You read that right. Hermes is not saying that you are like God. He is saying that you are God operating through a limited form. And when you wake up to this, when you understand the laws that govern the divine mind operating through you, you stop being a puppet in the hands of fate and become a conscious co-creator of reality. What you are about to discover are not TikTok manifestation techniques. They are not empty positive affirmations. They are 7 Hermetic laws that have crossed millennia because they work. Laws that were studied by Plato, codified by medieval alchemists, rediscovered by Jung, and that echo, surprisingly, in discoveries of modern quantum physics. Throughout this video, we will decode each of these 7 laws, and you will understand why your thoughts are not just reactions, but commands sent to the universe. How reality works in polarities, and how you can instantly invert any mental state. Why everything vibrates, and how changing your vibrational frequency changes what you attract. How rhythm governs everything, and how you can neutralize destructive cycles. Why every cause has an effect, and how you can use this to manifest intentionally. How gender, masculine and feminine, operates on every level of creation, including in your mind. But a warning, if you are looking for comfort, this is not the right video, because these laws do not give you excuses, they give you power, and power means total responsibility. Let's begin. The principle of mentalism. The universe is mental. The Kybalion. The all is mind. The universe is mental. The first and most fundamental Hermetic law is this: everything that exists, matter, energy, time, space, you, me, the stars, the atoms, everything is a mental manifestation. The entire universe is a projection of the universal mind, which the Hermetists called the all. This does not mean that the universe is an illusion. It means that it is mental in its essence. The difference is crucial. Why does this work? Because if the universe is mental, then your individual mind is not separate from the universal mind. It is a part of it. Just as a wave in the ocean is not separate from the ocean, it is the ocean in a particular form. And if your mind is part of the universal mind, then your thoughts are not isolated events happening inside your skull. They are disturbances in the universal mental field. They are like stones thrown into a lake, creating ripples that propagate across the entire structure of reality. The Hermetists said, to change external circumstances, you must first change internal conditions, because the external is always a reflection of the internal. As above, so below. Plato, centuries after Hermes, arrived at the same conclusion through the path of philosophical dialectic. He proposed the theory of the world of forms, that everything we see in the physical world is only an imperfect shadow of perfect forms that exist in a higher mental realm. A physical chair is imperfect, breakable, temporary. But the idea of chair, the pure mental concept, is eternal, perfect, indestructible. And which is more real? The physical chair that will rot, or the mental idea that never dies? Plato concluded, the mental is more real than the physical. The physical is just a temporary manifestation of the mental. Now bring this into your life. You look at your circumstances, your bank account, your body, your relationships, and say, this is my reality. But the Hermetists would say, no, this is just the external manifestation of your internal mental state. If your mind is in chaos, your external life reflects chaos. If your mind is in harmony, your external life reflects harmony. Not because the universe is punishing or rewarding you, but because external reality is literally built by internal mental state. Modern quantum physics partially corroborates this. The double-slit experiment showed that subatomic particles behave differently when they are observed, as if the observer's consciousness affects the behavior of matter. The Hermetists would say, obviously, matter is consciousness. The Arsenal. Practical application. Tactic 1. Daily mental reprogramming. Every day, before anything else, do this Hermetic exercise. Sit in silence. Close your eyes. Repeat mentally, I am not the body. I am not the circumstances. I am mind, and my mind is an extension of the universal mind. Therefore, my thoughts have creative power. Now, visualize what you want to manifest, not as a distant desire, but as something that already exists on the mental plane and is only awaiting physical manifestation. The Hermetists called this creating on the mental plane first, because everything that exists physically existed mentally first. Always. The principle of correspondence. As above, so below. Hermes Trismegistus, Emerald Tablet. As above, so below. As below, so above. The second Hermetic law states that there is a correspondence between the different planes of existence, physical, mental, and spiritual. What happens on one plane is reflected on the others. The macro reflects the micro. The universe reflects the individual. Why does this matter? Because it means you can understand the universe by studying yourself, and you can transform yourself by studying the universe. If you want to understand how God thinks, study how your own mind works, because your mind is a miniature of the divine mind. If you want to change the universe, change yourself, because the universe will reorganize to correspond to your new state. Spinoza, a 17th-century philosopher, reached a similar conclusion. He claimed that God and nature are the same thing. There is no separation, and therefore studying nature is studying God, and knowing yourself is knowing God. Leonardo da Vinci was a Hermetist. His famous drawing, The Vitruvian Man, is not just anatomy, it is Hermetic philosophy encoded. He drew the man inscribed in a circle and a square. Why? Because the circle represents the cosmos, the divine, the infinite. The square represents the earth, the material, the finite. And man is in both. He is the bridge between heaven and earth, between the spiritual and the physical. And the proportions? They are not random. Leonardo discovered that the proportions of the human body reflect the proportions of the cosmos. The microcosm, man, mirrors the macrocosm, universe. As above, so below. You want to understand why your life is the way it is? Look within. Your external world is a mirror of your internal world. You live in financial chaos? Look at the chaos in your thoughts about money. You attract toxic relationships? Look at the toxicity in the relationship you have with yourself. You feel trapped? Look at the mental prisons you built. And the good news? Change the internal and the external reorganizes automatically. Not because you are manifesting, but because you're restoring the natural correspondence between the planes. The Arsenal, Practical Application. Tactic 2, the Mirror Exercise. Every week, take pen and paper. Divide the page into 2 columns. Column 1, My External Reality. List everything that is happening in your external life. Situations, relationships, material conditions. Column 2, My Corresponding Mental State. For each external item, identify the internal mental state that is creating that correspondence. Example: external, I am always broke. Internal, I believe money is scarce and hard to get. Now you know where to work. Change the internal belief, and the external correspondence will change.
The principle of vibration. Nothing is at rest. Everything vibrates. The Kybalion. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. The third Hermetic law states that everything in the universe is in constant motion. There is no solid, static, dead matter. Everything, from subatomic particles to thoughts, vibrates at different frequencies. Why is this revolutionary? Because it means that the difference between matter and energy, between sadness and joy, between poverty and abundance, is not a difference in type. It is a difference in vibrational frequency. A piece of ice and water vapor are chemically identical, H2O. The only difference? The speed of the molecules. Slower vibration equals ice. Faster vibration equals vapor. The Hermetists said the same principle applies to mental states. Fear and courage are not separate opposites. They are the same energy vibrating at different frequencies. And if you can change the frequency, you change the state. Nikola Tesla, genius inventor and student of Hermeticism, said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Tesla was not speaking abstractly. He discovered that different electrical frequencies produce completely different effects. The same electric current vibrating at different frequencies can light a bulb, melt metal, or transmit information through the air. And he intuited that the same principle applies to consciousness. Thoughts are waves. Emotions are frequencies. And if you change your mental frequency, you change what you attract, because similar frequencies resonate with each other. You are vibrating right now, not metaphorically, literally. Your thoughts, your emotions, your words, all of these are vibrational patterns. And here is the law. You attract what vibrates at the same frequency as you. If you vibrate in fear, you attract circumstances that confirm fear. If you vibrate in gratitude, you attract circumstances that confirm gratitude. Not because the universe is magical, but because frequencies resonate. Think of a tuning fork. If you strike a tuning fork tuned to C and bring it near another tuning fork tuned to C, the second one begins to vibrate by itself. Resonance. The universe works the same way. The arsenal. Practical application. Tactic 3. Vibrational calibration. Every morning, consciously choose which frequency you want to vibrate in today. Do not choose circumstances like, I want X or Y to happen. Choose vibrational states. Today I will vibrate in gratitude, or today I will vibrate in courage, or today I will vibrate in certainty. How do you do this in practice? Identify the emotion that represents that vibration. Remember a moment when you felt that emotion intensely. Recreate that feeling in the body now, breathing, posture, facial expression. Hold it for 3 to 5 minutes. You have just calibrated your frequency. Now watch what you attract throughout the day.
The principle of polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. The Kybalion. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same thing. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. The fourth Hermetic law states that everything has two extremes, hot and cold, light and dark, love and hate. But here is the secret. These opposites are not different things. They are different degrees of the same thing. Where does hot end and cold begin? There is no dividing line. It is a continuum. The same goes for everything. Courage and fear? Different degrees of the same energy. Love and hate? Same energy, different frequencies. Wealth and poverty? Mindsets at opposite poles of the same spectrum. And here is the explosive implication. If opposites are the same thing in different degrees, then you can transform any state into its opposite simply by changing the degree. You do not need to destroy fear to have courage. You just need to move the fear energy to a higher frequency on the same spectrum. This is mental alchemy. Heraclitus, a pre-Socratic philosopher, was already teaching this 2,500 years ago. The way up and the way down are one and the same. He observed nature. Day becomes night. Night becomes day. Life becomes death. Death feeds new life. War and peace, youth and old age. Everything flows between opposites. And he concluded you cannot have one pole without the other. There is no up without down, no good without evil, no pleasure without pain. But you can consciously choose which pole of the spectrum you want to live in. And the Hermetists taught the technique to do this: mental transmutation. You're angry? Do not try to suppress it. Realize anger and passion are on the same spectrum. Transmute anger into productive passion. Change the degree, not the nature. You're afraid? Do not run from it. Realize fear and excitement are almost identical physiologically. Racing heart, adrenaline, intense focus. Reinterpret fear as excitement. You are changing the pole. You're in despair? Realize despair and hope are on the same spectrum. Despair is only hope vibrating at a low frequency. Raise the frequency. The arsenal. Practical application. Tactic 4. Polarity transmutation. When you feel an intense negative emotion, do this. Identify the opposite pole. Fear to courage, anger to love, despair to hope. Recognize they are the same energy. This fear is the same energy as courage, just at a low frequency. Visualize a radio dial. Imagine you are tuned to one frequency. Now slowly turn the dial to the opposite frequency. Embody it physically. Change your posture, breathing, tone of voice to match the opposite pole. You are not suppressing, you are transmuting. Like an alchemist turns lead into gold, you are turning low vibration into high vibration.
So far, we have explored the first 4 Hermetic principles, the foundations. You have understood that the universe is mental, that there is correspondence between all planes, that everything vibrates, and that opposites are identical in nature. These are the structural laws of reality. They show you how the universe works. But now we go deeper. Now we will explore the final 3 principles, those that teach you not only to understand reality, but to manipulate it consciously. Because understanding the laws is not enough. You need to know how to apply them intentionally to reprogram your reality. Let's go.
The principle of rhythm. Everything has flow and reflux. The Kybalion. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The 5th Hermetic law states that everything moves in cycles. There is a high tide and a low tide. A pendulum that swings to one side inevitably swings to the other, and the intensity of the swing in one direction determines the intensity of the swing back. Why is this crucial? Because it explains why after moments of great ecstasy, there often comes a crash. After intense success comes failure. After euphoria comes depression. Not because you did something wrong, but because that is the nature of rhythm. The pendulum swung to one extreme, and now it is returning. But the Hermeticists discovered something brilliant. You can neutralize rhythm through the law of neutralization. You do not stop the pendulum from swinging, but you remove yourself from the pendulum. You rise to a higher mental plane where rhythm does not affect you. Arthur Schopenhauer, a 19th century German philosopher, described the same principle in another way. He talked about the will, a blind and impersonal force that drives all existence in cycles of desire and suffering. You desire something, you get it, momentary pleasure, boredom, new desire, cycle repeats. And Schopenhauer saw this as condemnation. He said, life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom. But the Hermeticists had a solution Schopenhauer did not, to rise above the pendulum, not to deny desire, not to repress the will, but to observe it from a higher plane where you were no longer identified with it. You are in a high moment of life? Great. But do not cling. The rhythm will swing back. Not out of pessimism, but out of natural law. So enjoy it without fully identifying with it. You are in a low moment. Relax. The pendulum will swing back. It is not permanent. It is just rhythm. The more you resist, the more intense the swing. But real mastery? Becoming the observer of the pendulum, not the ball hanging from it. When you rise to the higher mental plane, you see the rhythm happening, but it no longer swings you. The Arsenal. Practical application. Tactic 5. Rhythm neutralization. When you feel you are being dragged by a cycle, whether extreme euphoria or extreme depression, do this. Recognize the rhythm. This is just the pendulum swinging. It's not me, it's the nature of rhythm. Rise mentally. Visualize yourself rising above the situation, as if you were floating and observing from above. Anchor in the center. Repeat mentally, I am the unmoved center. Rhythm happens, but I remain. Act without attachment. Keep acting, but without extreme emotional identification with the outcome. The Stoics called this amor fati. The Buddhists call it equanimity. The Hermeticists call it neutralization of rhythm. Same principle.
The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. The Kybalion. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. The sixth Hermetic law states that nothing happens by chance. Everything is governed by cause and effect. And most people live as effects, reacting to circumstances. But Hermetic masters live as causes, creating circumstances intentionally. There is a hierarchy of causation. The lowest level, you react to circumstances. You are the effect. The middle level, you respond to circumstances consciously. You are still partly an effect, but you begin to be a cause. The highest level, you create circumstances through mental causation. You are the primary cause. Most people are at the lowest level. Something happens, they react emotionally. That creates more negative circumstances. The cycle repeats. But the Hermeticists taught, rise to the plane of causation. Instead of reacting to the world, create the world through conscious, mental causation. Napoleon Bonaparte, a student of Hermeticism and member of esoteric societies, understood causation. He did not wait for circumstances to be favorable. He created favorable circumstances through decisive action based on a clear mental vision. Before each battle, he spent hours visualizing every move of enemy soldiers, of terrain, of possibilities. He created the battle on the mental plane first, and then manifested it on the physical plane. He said, imagination rules the world, because he understood imagination is the plane of mental causation. First, you create mentally. Then, the physical conforms. You want something in life? Do not sit around waiting for it to happen. Do not count on luck. Do not just react to circumstances hoping they will improve. Be the cause. Create mentally first. Visualize exactly what you want to manifest in that area. Feel the emotions associated with it, and then act on the physical plane with the conviction that you are simply materializing what already exists on the mental plane. This is not magical thinking. It is recognizing that the mental plane precedes the physical plane. Everything that exists physically existed mentally first, always. The arsenal, practical application. Tactic 6, becoming cause, not effect. Every morning before starting your day, do this exercise. Identify where you are being effect. In which areas of life are you just reacting? Create the mental cause. Visualize exactly what you want to manifest in that area. Declare your causation. Say out loud, I am the cause of this reality. I created it on the mental plane. Now I will manifest it on the physical plane. Act as cause. Throughout the day, act from the conviction that you are the cause, not the effect. When you live as cause, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the creator of them. The principle of gender. Everything has masculine and feminine.
The Kybalion. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The seventh and final Hermetic law states that everything contains both principles, masculine and feminine. We are not talking about biological sex. We are talking about creative energies. The masculine principle is active, assertive, projective, analytical, logical. The feminine principle is receptive, intuitive, nurturing, creative, emotional. And every act of creation requires the union of both. Why does this matter? Because most people are unbalanced. They operate predominantly in one principle and repress the other. Modern men especially have been conditioned to suppress completely the feminine principle, intuition, emotion, receptivity. The result? They become action machines without direction. They work intensely but do not know for what. They are all yang, no yin. Women, on the other hand, have often been conditioned to suppress the masculine principle, assertiveness, logic, directed action. The result? They have visions and intuitions but do not manifest them. They are all yin, no yang. Hermetic mastery is to balance both. To use the feminine principle to receive the vision, the intuition, the insight, and to use the masculine principle to act, structure, manifest. Carl Jung discovered this Hermetic principle through psychology. He spoke of anima, the feminine in man, and animus, the masculine in woman. And he realized when you repress one of the principles, it goes into the shadow and becomes destructive. A man who completely represses his feminine principle becomes brutally rational, disconnected from emotion, incapable of intimacy. But the repressed anima manifests as irrational mood swings, emotional projections onto women, or obsessions. A woman who completely represses her masculine principle becomes passive, indecisive, waiting for others to make decisions for her. But the repressed animus manifests as brutal inner criticism, mental rigidity, or the projection of impossible expectations onto men. Jung said, integrate the opposites, become psychologically androgynous, not in the physical sense, but in the sense of consciously possessing both principles. You want to manifest something, you need both principles. The feminine principle receives the vision. You meditate, you open up, you allow insights to come to you. You intuit the path. You feel what is right. The masculine principle manifests the vision. You plan, you structure, you act decisively, you build in the physical world. If you only have the feminine, you get stuck in dreams and intuitions that never materialize. If you only have the masculine, you act intensely but without true direction, just repeating what others told you to do. Hermetic masters balance both. They receive and act. They intuit and structure. They feel and decide. The arsenal, practical application. Tactic 7, balancing the principles. Every week, assess. Masculine principle, action. Am I acting decisively toward my goals? Am I structuring and planning? Am I exercising conscious will? Feminine principle, receptivity. Am I opening to intuitions and insights? Am I allowing solutions to come to me? Am I connected to my emotions and sensations? If you are unbalanced toward one side, consciously compensate. If you are too much in the masculine, only acting, not intuiting, dedicate time to meditation, receptivity, silence. If you are too much in the feminine, only intuiting, not acting, force yourself to act decisively, even without total certainty.
Mastery is dancing between the two, like breathing, inhaling, feminine, receive, and exhaling, masculine, project. Both necessary, neither superior.
Hermes Trismegistus, real or mythical, left a legacy that has crossed millennia because it touches something fundamental. The laws that govern reality are mental, not physical. The 7 laws you have just learned are not superstition. They are descriptions of how consciousness operates. And when you understand how consciousness operates, you stop being a victim of reality and become an architect of reality. To recap, mentalism. The universe is mental. Your thoughts are creative, not merely reactive. Correspondence. As within, so without. Change the internal, the external reorganizes. Vibration. Everything vibrates. Change your frequency, change what you attract. Polarity. Opposites are the same thing in different degrees. Transmute negative energy into positive. Rhythm. Everything flows in cycles. Neutralize yourself by rising above the pendulum. Cause and effect. Nothing is chance. Be cause, not effect. Gender. Everything contains masculine and feminine. Balance action, masculine, with receptivity, feminine. These 7 laws are the source code of reality, and now you have access to it. But a final warning. Knowledge without application is useless. You can memorize these 7 laws perfectly, and your life may not change at all. Why? Because knowing is not doing. The Hermetists were clear. Only serious initiates should receive this knowledge, not out of elitism, but because this knowledge demands responsibility. When you understand that your thoughts create reality, you can no longer blame anyone. When you understand that you are the cause, not the effect, you no longer have excuses. When you understand that the universe is mental, you realize you are co-creator of everything that happens to you. This is liberating, but it is frightening. Because it means that if your life is not what you want, it is because you have not applied these laws consciously. And now that you know them, you have a choice. Apply them, or continue being a victim of the reality you yourself are unconsciously creating. Hermes Trismegistus, Corpus Hermeticum, 10.9. Man alone ascends to heaven and measures it. You are not trapped. You never were. You just thought you were. And that thought created the prison. Now you know. The key was always with you, because the prison is mental, and you are the mind. So, what will you create?